Assalamu alaikum students. I hope you all are well, safe and healthy at home. I'm your course instructor Farzana Khan. Welcome to all of you in this class of semantics. So in previous class you were taught about the lexical semantics, that what is lexical semantics, what is word. We discussed about the different definitions of the words, how to give meaning to the words, and the problems in arising giving meaning to the words. And we also talked about the vagueness and ambiguity and different types of ambiguity. Well, in today's class, we are going to discuss about the lexical relations, that what are lexical relations and how can we relate one word with another word on the basis of the senses and meaning. So pay close attention to the lecture to understand the concept of lexical relations and the relation of lexemes among and between. Well, let's start from the topic. So when we talk about the lexical relation, this is basically the conceptual relation or the relation on the basis of the sense. Here you can see in this tree diagram, the man has relation with animal kingdom because it's a part of the animal kingdom. Similarly, man has relation with the living thing because it's a kind of the living thing. Man has relation with the woman because man is opposite to woman. Man has relation with guy because man is similar to guy. Man has relation with plant because man is not a plant. So these are basically the lexeme on the basis and this is the basically the word. Lexical word, we can say the word, and these all are the words. And what is the relationship among these words? Basically, this is called the lexical relation. And in this class, you are going to learn about this relationship among the words and among the lexeme. So that how do the relationship build and what do we call those particular relations? Basically, in previous diagram, you can still see here that in this diagram, man is connected with several concepts: the living thing, animal kingdom, woman, guy, plant, by means of distinct relations. So man has relations with all these words. So what is the relation? What are the names of these lexical or conceptual relations? These are called the hyponymy. It's a kind of relation. Meronymy, the part of relation. Antonymy, oppositeness in meaning. Synonymy, the sameness in meaning. And lastly, the incompatibility. So this is what we are going to discuss in today's class. These are basically the relations. These are names of the relations. So in today's class, we will talk about these relations, lexical relations. The first of all, we have the homonym. We can define it when one form has two or more unrelated meanings. We use the term homonym. Mean one form which has two or more unrelated meanings. You must be focused on it, unrelated meanings. So these are called homonym. So let me tell you with the example bank. One form but has two more unrelated meanings. Bank, bank of a river, bank, financial institution. Right, so these are two, basically we can say these are two words. So these words have the relationship which is basically unrelated. So they have the relationship of unrelated meanings. So this is basically called the homonymy. So bat, flying creature, and bat used in sports. So words one form but has two unrelated meanings. This is called the homonymy. Similarly, the race, which is used for this contest of speed, and the race, which is basically the action group. Right, so mole and mole, small animal, mole on the skin, pupil, which is basically a student at school, and the other is basically used for an eye. So this is basically called the homonymy, the relation, basically the one form of the word which has the unrelated meaning. So we can say that in these two words are homonyms. So homonymy is basically is a relation, a sense relation, where there are unrelated senses of the same phonological word. Unrelated senses of the same phonological words, and according to some authors, they have distinguished between homographs, which they call that unrelated senses of the same written word, and they have called that other is basically homophones, which are the unrelated senses of the same spoken words. Homographs are basically unrelated senses of the same written word, and homophones are basically the unrelated senses of the same spoken words, because here you can see the homophones, similar sounds, and homographs, similar image picture, or you can say the written word. So the types of the homonymy are basically, first is lexemes with the same syntactic category and the same spelling. As I already gave you the example of the bank, bank of the river, site of the river, and bank financial institution. So it has basically these two words we can say have the same lexical syntactic category and has the same spelling, but they are used for different purposes because they have the different meanings. So as we stated, unrelated senses. So lexemes with the same syntactic category but different spellings. For example, verbs ring and ring. Both have same syntactic category but different spellings, ring and ring. Right? So different syntactic category but with the same spelling are the example of basically the examples of keep as a verb and keep as a noun. And different syntactic categories with different spellings, made and made. So these are basically the types of homonymy. So the next lexical relation is polysemy. Polysemy is a sense relation where there are multiple senses of the same phonological word that are related. In previously I told you the unrelated senses, but here the focus is on multiple senses because it's a relation where there are multiple senses of the same phonological words having the same sounds, but they basically have the multiple senses that are related. So lexicographers tend to use criteria of relatedness to identify the polysemy. Speakers' intuitions and historical development of the word decide whether its sense are related or not to the particular next lexeme. For example, the word book is treated as a polysemy in Collins Dictionary of the English language, whereas the word booker is treated as a case of homonymy. So speakers' intuitions and the historical facts may contradict each other. For example, the word gay. It has two meanings, the lively and the homosexual. Although the second meaning is derived from the first, and two meanings are considered unrelated for many English speakers. So we can define that polysemy is basically a word when is a type of relation when we encounter two or more words with the same form and related meanings. We use the term polysemy. For example, head. Head can be used as the object on top of your body. It can be on top of a glass of beer. It can be a person at the top of a company, because we do use head for the boss, or a person who is the top management of the department, or many other things. So word has multiple meanings. So the words which are a term, a relationship, which is basically a term which is with the same form but they have related meanings. So foot, if we talk about foot, it can be the foot of a person, right? It can be the foot of a bed. and it can be the foot of a mountain. So it has the related multiple meanings. So to indicate the polysyny and the relation, basically we do use such type of diagram, tree diagram, to tell that play can be used as a sport verb. It can be used for the game. It can be used for the head. It can be the part of the body. It can be, we can say, used for playing music as a verb. It can be used as a joke, and it can be used for games, for the theater production. We can say the play can be used for the in other sounds which we can say the drama. So this is the tree diagram of polysyny, this word having multiple related meanings. So the other relation is basically the synonym. Synonyms are different words which have the same or very similar meanings. For instance, we can say lawyer and attorney. Both of the words have different spelling, different structure, but having a similar meaning. True synonymy is rare in the world about a language. So synonyms may belong to different dialects as the case is for the lift and elevator. So they may belong to different register, colloquial, formal, informal, as we can use the skinny, thin, slim, depending on the culture, the formal setting and informal setting. So synonyms may indicate basically the positive and negative attitudes, such as slim, which is positive, and skinny, which is negative. And two words that have similar meanings might be interpreted differently depending on basically the context. As you can see in this example, my big sister, big means the elder, and my large sister, large means the fat, or sometimes the large can be used for the tall, depending on the informal way of communication. Next relation about which you are pretty clear, which is opposites and antonyms. In other sense, it can be called the antonymy. So antonyms are words which are opposite in meaning. So the types of antonyms. Basically, the simple antonyms, complementary pairs, or binary pairs. It is basically a relation between opposites in which the positive of one implies the negative of the other, as in dead or alive. Right? So this is the simple antonym in which the positive of one implies the negative of the other, dead and alive. So next antonym, next type of antonym is basically the gradable antonyms. It's a type of relation between opposites in which the positive of one doesn't imply the negative of the other, as in fast and slow. Right? Fast and slow, the positive of one doesn't it's not implying the negative of the other. So this relation is typically used with adjectives. In this lexical relation, there are intermediate terms as in hot, warm, cold, and you can say cold, hot and cold. So furthermore, in some pairs, one term is more basic than the other. It is more common to ask how long is it rather than how short it is. So in addition, intensifiers can be used as in very cold, very warm, etc. So there are basically two types, simple antonyms and gradable antonyms. So the other kind of antonyms and opposites are reverses. A relation between opposites in which one term describes a movement in one direction and the other term describes the same movement in the opposite direction, as the name reverses implies one direction and the other directions. So for example, the pull and push, fill and empty, these are also antonyms and fall in the type of reverses antonyms. And the next is converses. This is a type of lexical antonyms relation which describes the two terms from alternative point of view, as in above, below, and on and belong to. And next kind of antonyms is taxonomic ancestors. This is a lexical relation which describes words which are at same level in a taxonomy, as in red, yellow, orange. Some taxonomies are closed, as the case is for days of the week, while other taxonomies are open, such as the flavor of ice creams, because they can be the various flavors. And closed are they basically when we talk about the days of the week, they are specifically the 7 days of the week. There are no more other names of the days that flavors can be met. So a sub-relation of taxonomy is the adult-young relation, as in cat, as adult-young, as we can say cat and kitten, and similar relation holds the relation between male and female pair and bull and cow. So these are basically the types of antonyms. Let me tell you about the other relation which is very important, which is hyponymy. So it's a relation of inclusion where a hyponymy includes the meaning of a more general term which is called superordinate or hypernym. For example, dog and cat are hyponyms of animal. So for making your concept clear, let me show you from the book. Here you can see the bird, right? And a crow, hawk, duck, etc. Right? So these all are the hyponymy of the bird. And when we talk about the hawk, then kestrel and sparrowhawk are basically the hyponymy of the hawk. So here kestrel is the hyponymy of hawk, and hawk is basically the hyponymy of the bird. And we assume the relationship in transitive so that this is basically transitive relationship. Kestrel is the hyponymy of hawk and hawk is the hyponymy of bird. This is the transitive relationship so that kestrel is hyponymy of bird. So other taxonomies reflect the classification of the human artifacts. There is also taxonomic sisters relationship, like kestrel and sparrowhawk has taxonomic sisters relationship. And because this is basically the horizontal relationship, crow and hawk and duck, this is basically the taxonomic sisters relationship. This is intransitive relationship. You need to keep in your mind that how to draw the diagram for the hyponymy and for the other relations to show the other relations on the basis of inclusion, on the basis of the senses, relatedness or unrelatedness. So here you can see animal is the basically cat is the hyponymy of the animal, right? In the animal category fall all these animals, and in basically we can say the bobtail is the hyponymy of cat. Similarly, Japanese bobtail is the hyponymy of bobtail, and bobtail is the hyponymy of cat, and cat is the hyponymy of animal. Right, this is the transitive. Basically, we can say this is the transitive relationship, and the bobtail and ragdoll, they have taxonomic sisters relationships. I hope the point of hyponymy is clear from this tree diagram. You need to gain grip on tree diagrams because in the test I can give you that I can give you certain words to draw tree diagram of the hyponymy and other important relations of lexemes. So as I told you about the characteristics of hyponymy transitivity, if shepherd is a hyponymy of a dog and dog is the hyponymy of animal, then shepherd is hyponymy of animal too. So therefore hyponymy is portrayed as the logical relation of class inclusion, a type of relationship. Right, a horse is a type of animal, punching is a type of hitting. So this is logical transitivity relationship. And other sixth important relationship is basically the part 4 relationships. Meronomy, a term which is used to describe part 4 relationships between lexical items as in engine and car. So meronyms vary in necessity. There are three types. Some meronyms are necessary parts as nose and face, right? Some are usual but not obligatory parts such as collar and shirt. Not necessarily every time shirt has a collar. Shirt can has the band, shirt can be without the collar. So, and some are optional parts such as cellar and house, right? So, meronymy differs from hyponymy in transitivity. Hyponymy is always transitive and but meronymy may or may not be transitive. This point you need to keep in your mind. It may or may not be transitive, but hyponymy is always transitivity. I explained the relation. So a transitive example is male, but keep it in your mind that meronymy can be transitive. It can have the characteristics of transitive and cannot, right? So here is the example of transitive nail, finger and hand, right? Hand is basically is the whole and finger is a part of the hand and again nail is a part of the finger. So one can say a hand has nails. And non-transitive example is that whole, button and shirt, right? Shirt has buttons and shirt has hole. But we cannot say that one cannot say that shirt has hole. This is a non-transitive relation, right? And in basically hyponymy, we always have the transitive relation. But in meronymy, we don't have every time. So here is the tree diagram of meronymy: animal, back, tail, head, leg. Leg has knee and heel, right? So animal has no head. So head has nose, mouth, eyes and ears, right? So we can say mouth, right? If head has mouth, so in this way we can say animal has mouth. So tongue, but we cannot say that every animal is going to be like teeth, whatever. So mouth includes the tongue and teeth. So if we can say if there are relationship, taxonomic sisters relationship in this way and transitive relationship in this way, right? So this is the tree diagram of meronymy. So when we talk about the characteristics of meronymy, basically it has a part-word relationships. So tongue and teeth are parts of the mouth, whereas we can say that nose, mouth, eyes, ears are parts of head. So this is part-word relationship. So similarly we can say hand. Hand has fingers and fingers has nails. So fingers, nails are part of hands, right? So this is part-word relationship and transitivity. Transitivity basically the relation which already we have discussed while talking about the hyponymy. But in meronymy sometimes it can be and sometimes it cannot be. So knee is a part of leg and leg is part of animal. Therefore it can be concluded that knee is part of animal. But if we say a room has a window and a window has a hole, it will sound weird to say that room has a hole. So in meronymy, transitivity can be and cannot be. Member collection. This is another relationship. As the name implies, this is a relationship between the word for a unit as the usual word for a collection of the units which is used. For example, the relationship between ship and fleet, it's a member collection, right? Ship is the member of the fleet. So bird, flock. Flock is the unit which includes the bird. So bird is basically the member of the flock. So tree is the member of the forest. Forest is the unit which includes the trees, right? And this relationship is called the member collection relation. So the other lexical relation is the portion mass. This relation between a mass noun and usual unit of measurement or division. For example, drop is used for liquid. We cannot use drop for paper. So there is a relationship. Drop will always be used for liquid. So portion mass, a lexical relationship between a mass noun and the usual unit of measurement as drop liquid, and sheet is used for paper. We cannot use sheet for liquid, and we cannot use drop for paper. So the next relation which I'm going to tell you is the derivational relation. This is basically, we can say derivational relations are an important part of lexical semantic systems in many languages, especially those of rich inflection. So they represent a wide variety of semantics, oppositions, analysis of morphological word forms in terms of prefixes and suffixes, and provides limited information about their semantics. So basically in English there are multiple derivational relations. In the next next few slides I'll show you. So we will basically talk about the two types, the causative verbs and agentive noun. So let me tell you about the causative verbs first. In English, we can identify the relations between an adjective describing a state, a verb describing the change of a state, because verb is used to describe the change of the state, and adjective is used sometimes to describe the state. And similarly, verb can also be used to describe the cause of the change of the state. For example, here you can see in this sentence, the road is wide, right? Here it is state. The road widened, the change of the state, right? The city council widened the roads. So this is basically the causative. So the relationships is marked in English in a number of different ways, in multiple ways. So there may be no difference in the shape of the word, as in you can see the gates are open. The porter opened the gate, and gates open at 9. These open, basically the word open has been used for the 3 times in a different way. First, in the first sentence, it has been used as an adjective, and in the second sentence, porter opened the gate. Here, this word is basically a transitive verb, and in the third sentence, the gates open at 9 is intransitive verb. So, when we talk about the causative verbs, so often there are gaps in this relation. For example, the English speakers may say the soil is rich. And they can say I enriched the soil, but they cannot say the soil is enriched. So another element in this relation is an adjective describing the state which results from a process, which is called resultative adjective, that takes the form of the past participle, as for example open and broken, right? So the next is basically agentive nouns. One agentive noun derived from verbs and ends with er, or, as I already told you. Suffixes are prefixes. So here we are talking about the suffixes. So as you can see, the driver, the director. So dictionaries list these derivations for 2 reasons. First is that there are some irregularities. For example, footballer, there are no football, there is no football, etc. So the noun may have several senses, some of which are far from the associated verb, as in the creamer, a jug for cream, or we can say the renter, a male prostitute, right? So dictionaries list these derivations, that there are some irregularities, and it is not possible to predict the agentive nouns for verbs such as depend, dependent, cook, whether someone is cooking, or whether cook we are using as a noun, right? So it's all about the lexical relations. In today's class, we have specifically talked about the lexical relations. We have discussed the different relations, the hyponymy, the polysemy, the meronymy, metonymy, and we have talked about the synonymy, antonymy, and the other basically relations which are among the lexemes and between the lexemes. We have talked about the lexical relations and tree diagrams, which are very important. You need to go for the practice of the tree diagrams. So it was all about today's lecture. Take care. Now I'll wind up the session. Allah Hafiz.